Hello. I was going to film this video in my kitchen, but I decided it was just going to be too messy. So I'm going to unpack my bag and then we can get started. I'm Julie from Julie Davis Flower Workshops and Flower Start, the online flower arranging classes. I hope you enjoy this video. If you do, please do give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. So what's in the box? I have got an already partly made wreath, some cane, basket cane, oddments there, some silver birch branches, more garden cane, a pair of scissors, some gold ribbon, some wire on a reel. This is mossing wire that you use for your Christmas door wreath. And I have got some more wires, some floristry stub wires, the straight wires, and some bulbs. I've got some hyacinth bulbs that are growing off in the other direction. That's because I've had them in this bag for a couple of days and they've trying to right themselves. And then some little bulbs that haven't yet come out into flower yet. So I'm going to get rid of all of that. Right, I think we're ready to make a start. So normally when I make my twiggy door wreaths, I just bind my materials round in a great big circle. I'm not actually going to show you how to do it in this video. I'm going to show you how to do it in the video above my shoulder. And now I can't quite remember whether it's that shoulder or that shoulder. I'm sticking with, I think it's going to be over that shoulder. So it's a video I shot a few years ago with my friend Alexandra Campbell, who runs the Middle Sized Blog YouTube channel, and we made a door wreath together using garden trimmings, so any kind of vines. So at the moment I'm sitting underneath our pergola. You can see, I think, I can't get my fingers in the right direction. We have these uprights that got grapevine growing through it and clematis, Virginia creeper. You could use anything that's quite long lengths but quite supple as well. I quite like using silver birch twigs. You'll find that after a windstorm, windy weather, that they fall off the branches really quickly, fall off the trees really quickly. So you just need to spot where the silver birch trees are in your neighbourhood and then go and pick up the branches from the floor afterwards, unless of course you happen to have a tree in your own garden and you can cut them direct. Over time they will dry out, so some of these are a bit dried out. But the gist is that you take your flexible branches and you bring them into a circle and then you wind these pieces in and out, and that gives you your base. Now the only problem with using something fine and flexible like silver birch is it's not very substantial, so it needs a sort of bigger heart to it. So what I decided to do was to use my basket cane. I'm just going to get rid of these bits, drop them on the floor. I couldn't do that in the kitchen, could I? So I've got some basket cane here. So I bought this online, and before you use it you need to soak it in water because it can be quite brittle. So this one I have soaked already, and it's the same way of making your wreath. It's sold on a coil, so it is naturally curling anyway. But I would start with one end and fashion that into a circle, and then holding on there, use your loose end to sew in and out around the cane. And then if you wanted to be a bit more substantial, you'd hold that last piece, stiffen your hand, and again use the loose end and come round. And it's up to you how many pieces of cane you use, but you can see it's starting to give me a really robust base to the bottom of my wreath. I then added in my silver birch branches, so where that last piece is, were pinged off, hold it there, added my silver birch in, and then sewed round. So what I did was I held the flexible ends in my hand, and the stubby ends, which have been closer to the tree trunk, I used those to do my stitching around the wreath base. And then when it got too brittle I just snapped them off, and then where I finished I then twist the wreath round and started adding in again. I can usually make my door wreaths like this without fixing it in place, but if you feel at any time that you want to use your wire to hold things in place or a piece of string, go ahead and do that. The challenge isn't to try and not have it bound together, but it is possible not to have any extra fixings, so it's entirely up to you what you do. So I've got this inside the heart of my door ring. I'm going to put these to one side and show you what my ring looks like. So you can see here that I've started work, and you can, part of the reason I wasn't doing it in the kitchen, it was just getting too messy. Perhaps if I'll show you, you can see from that side, but can you see the pail of the basket cane inside? So the more materials you add on top, the more you're going to hide that initial basket cane. When you first start off, your basket cane, it's really, really white. And with my brown sticks, it looked like it was a massive contrast, which wasn't very attractive. But I kept adding and adding materials. And what you can do is you can keep everything really nice and neat, or if you decide to, and you're making your own wreath and you'll know your own style, you might decide that you want to leave some trailing bits out. And then these little bits here, we have loads and loads of bindweed in our garden, and it's just nice to be able to use it. It's such a pain, especially in the spring and the summer, where it just grows everywhere. So I was just going underneath the bushes at the bottom of the garden, teasing out these bits of bindweed and adding those in as well, so putting them to some decorative use. I have used bindweed before. One Christmas, I'll have to see if I can find the video of that, and again I will post that up there if I can track down where the video was. So you just keep adding things in. So maybe you've got dogwood in the garden, or weeping willow, something like anything that will bend but will eventually hold its shape. So I am going to add in some few more bits and pieces on this. I quite like these trailing pieces, and this will look really good. You probably can't really see what it looks like because of the busy background behind me. But you can imagine this, it's dried materials. You could have that on your wall at home. Instead of putting a door wreath on the front door, why not hang it up at home in place of a picture hook, or on a picture hook in place of a picture. The only thing you need to watch then is, because everything is dried, that you won't sort of have this scattering of debris across your carpet. So I will add in some more bits from that, just to embrace that wild look. And then afterwards I'm going to stitch in some of this narrow gold ribbon, and the reason I'm using gold is because it just happened to be what I had to hand, but I thought it looked quite good against the bindweed. So we've got the rough, unwanted, uncared for, unloved bindweed contrasting with the rich luxury of a narrow piece of satin ribbon. So I quite like the two of those playing together. So what I'll do now is I will adjust the camera angle so you can look down and see what I'm doing. If I had a needle that took the ribbon, that would be really, really handy. But I'm going to be stitching through just using my fingers, so it is going to be a little bit not tricky, but just fiddly to do, so it just takes a little bit of time. But well, all the projects I show you how to make, you don't have to make them all at once. You could make the ring, just make the basket cane section first, leave it, enjoy it, come back and add in your decorative twigs, come back, add in your ribbon, come back later, add in your hyacinth bulbs. So it doesn't have to be a massive pressure to do it. You just come and go. It's a pick up and put down project. There's no time limit on it, so don't ever rush yourself when you're working like this. So I am going to scavenge around on the floor for a few more bits of my twig, and then add them in, and then I'll come back and show you what I'm doing next. So I've altered the camera angle and you can see better the wreath here. Nice circular shape, and I've started to add materials in that are deflecting off to the sides, and you want to keep adding the materials in the same way so you get this nice flow. So what I do here with some nice twiggy ends here, I want to come out in this direction. You almost need to put them in where you want them to finish, and then gently weave them through. So you're sort of doing a backwards action really, so that they end up where you want them to sit. Maybe you want some equal sort of fluffiness all over, or you want to create an accent area, or you don't have to have everything going the same way. You might want to change the direction, so just have a look. But conventionally you'd have all your materials swirling round in the same direction. So that feels quite firm to me, and I would always advise you to do a bit of the shake test. You don't want your wreath falling apart, whether it's going to be in your living room or on your front door if it gets catches the wind. So what you can do is bind over lightly with some wire, and I'll show you how to do that. And the easiest way is to use the binding wire that comes on a reel that and this is what you would use to put the moss on a traditional Christmas door wreath, and then turn the wreath over, and I'm going to bury down to find that original bit of basket cane, hook my wire around that, and then twist it together to tie, and then take some care with going over and over. So I still want some loose ends. If I was just to bind all the way around really tightly, I'd end up with a much more compact ring. But here I'm going to feed my wire between the fronds of the silver birch, so I still get that sort of filigree, that little effect to it, without crushing everything into the wire. I've got a big twiggy bit here that's sticking out, so I can bend that back in, just catch it in underneath the last bit of wire. And then we're back to the beginning again. So reel off a bit of wire and cut that, and then do exactly the same thing. Bury yourself down to a piece of the sturdy basket cane and twist and tie off there, just to hold it in place. If you want to, you could trim bits off, but I think once you get a pair of scissors out and start trimming, it is all, you never quite know when to stop. Here, with my bit of bindweed, it's a bit dense there, so I could thin it out a little bit, or again pull it out of the way. So that would be your basic door ring, and you could hang it up like that, but let's be slightly more decorative. I'm going to introduce the ribbon that I had. So find the end. What I'm going to do here is, it's quite a long bit of ribbon, which I've now got in a knot. If I find the midpoint, I can mark out how much ribbon I've got to go on each side of the wreath. So that's one end there. I attach the other end over here, and then find the midpoint and attach that onto my wreath. So I'm going to loop that underneath a piece of the wire, and then creating that loop there, thread the other bits through. So I now know that I've got that much ribbon to put on this side of the wreath, and the same for the other side as well. I'm not going to wrap my ribbon round and round because I want to show it off, and there's no point in having the ribbon at the back. So I'm going to feed it through, weave it and stitch it through the twigs until I'm happy with the effect. So I could leave it quite loopy. It's really here, it's mimicking the bindweed, but I am making sure I weave it in and out so it doesn't blow off. And if you think you've got too much ribbon, I could always cut it down. And every so often I think I will just take one of the lengths through a loop. So it does fix in place. I'm just using one ribbon here because I only had one that I thought went with my wreath, but if you've found that you had lots of different ribbons, you could put in different, widths and types of ribbon, perhaps some matte effect ribbons and some that are more glossy and glistening, whatever you like. And you don't need to go out and buy anything special, just see what you've got in your craft box. So that's got me back to the halfway point. I started here and I still got quite a lot of ribbon left. So I might fix it on at the halfway point and then make my way back again. So I'm back to the beginning again. I started off just down here and I'm going to tie off down there as well. And I've decided I might leave a little tail to make a decorative detail under where I'm going to put my bulbs. That's one half done, and now I'll do the next half. And I'm back to the beginning again here. So I got the option with those two long ties to make a little bow. The next job is to put in my decorative spring bulbs. I quite like these spring bulbs. Probably when they actually come out in flower they will be too big, but I like the contrast. They've got the same rough papery texture as the wreath, but also then you've got the contrast of this really lush green growth as well, and I think they look really great. It's positioned down in the bottom edge as an accent area, and probably my bigger hyacinths that are coming into flower are just going to be too big really. To fix those in place I'm going to use my floristry stub wires, hold the bulb and pierce all the way through it, and then bring that wire back round and twist it into position. Pierce all the way through, bring the wires to the side and twist to hold. And once you've wired up all your bulbs, it's time to fix them. I'm going to cluster mine at the base of the wreath. They'll be quite visually and actually quite heavy. So if you wanted to have bulbs going all the way around the top edge, I would just make sure that you choose a lighter weight bulb. So there, I am pushing through the wires. And you see them, there's one there and there's one there. Twist them to hold the bulb in place, and then with these cut ends I'm going to bend them back and tuck them back out of the way so that they don't scratch my door or the wall, and continue on. Pierce it through. Find them at the back. Sometimes you just find one wire. There's the other one. It can be quite tricky to find them sometimes. Twist. And then bury those ends back into the body of the wreath. And there you have the finished wreath. So it depends how many bulbs you want to add in. I've purposely grouped them together so that they don't look too static. You want to have them looking quite natural and poised. And then with the little bit of ribbon here I've got left over, I think I might just try that in a really simple bow so that that will flutter in the breeze and hang down a little bit. And that's my finished door wreath, and you could add in more and more materials as you found them. Perhaps if you're going for a walk and you found a few feathers, you could slot those in, or some branches that were beginning to bud. You know, if you've got forsythia growing in your garden, or the pink flowering currant, you could just add and add and add. So I'm walking up to my shed door, and I think that wreath looks pretty good. See the way the gold ribbon is fluttering in the breeze. It really does pick up well with the bindweed. I mean, you could use raffia instead of bindweed, or a bit of sisal, anything you've got to hand, just all woven in. It's like a little bird's nest getting ready for the springtime. And then with the young fleshy growth coming out of the hyacinths, really great contrast.